In reality, the bubble is our known world and we walk around in it and that's it. But we can expand it and we can pop it and we can get glimpses of this other thing that's out there, this other version of ourselves, this other way of looking at the world. And pretty soon the bubble's going to come back. I mean, that's just the way it is. You got to float through somehow. Swimrun is a great way to pop the bubble, to expand your concept of who you are, your concept of the environment that's around you, especially if you're doing a local swim run. And I think books do the same thing. So that's why I'm attracted to sports and books. I mean, because to me, both, there's nothing that can expand possibility like story and sport.
Welcome to the Low Tide Boyz, a Swimrun podcast. I'm Chip.
And I'm Chris, and this is episode 304 of the show. We got a throwback for everyone this week. Coming back, he was on the show. What was it, Chipper?
July 2020, episode 28.
Episode 28. So
the early days.
Don't listen to those episodes. Coming back on the show is Adam Skolnik, our favorite journalist, the person who literally extended the runway of the Low Tide Boyz in the very early days by at least 6 months. Chipper was quoted in New York Times. This was after Catalina 2020. We've become good friends with him since then, and he has a new book coming out. He has a novel that he wrote, so we're going to chat with him about that and Swimrun and Wildness and rediscovering your wild, and why Swimrun is just such a great vehicle for that. But that was a fun conversation.
Yeah, it was a great one, and excited for him about this novel, and we're fond of his work in the New York Times. He also, is it ghostwritten? Is that the technical term?
Yes.
For both of the David Goggins books, as well as did the audiobook there. You've also heard him on the Rich Roll podcast, so it's nice of him to not forget the little guys on the way up on his ascent, but really excited.
Yeah, and actually, speaking of Rich Roll podcast, early in the show, he went on the show and he was wearing a Low Tide Boyz hat that we had sent him. And you couldn't believe how much love we were getting from that, and people commenting on Rich Roll, like all the Low Tide Boyz shout outs. So that was a super cool moment. And I remember that.
When did that happen? We should throw that back.
That was a long time ago.
That specific hat and photo appears in one of Rich Roll's Voices of Change book. One of the volumes in there, that photo is in there, which the Low Tide Boyz will live on, which is, again, just crazy to even think that happened there. But such a great conversation, and his book, it's a novel, but there's such clear parallels between Swimrun and his sort of journey and actually writing the book and like training for an endurance event. I mean, there were so many similarities coming through. That was really great, and great to catch up with Mr. Skolnik again.
Another proper chin wag.
Yeah, absolutely. So training update. At the release of this episode, you will be boarding a plane very shortly to head to the New York City Marathon, Chris.
I'm going to be trick-or-treating with the kids and this guy, Chipper.
Do you have to exercise severe restraint on Halloween candy, it being tape race week?
I think it's going to actually be less for me and more for my wife, Susan, because, we usually raid our kids. They don't really listen to the show. So we usually raid their stash. So she's going to have to show restraint until I come back on Sunday night or 1 a.m. or whenever it is.
And then you're going to hit it hard.
Yeah, probably.
Hit it real hard.
Even though I'm going to try to be good through Austin. And then I'm going to, guardrails are off.
All she wrote. But we've been syncing up for more of our workouts. I think in the past couple months since I've gotten this new job, we've definitely had more workouts together. We had a long run on Sunday. We, 15, 16 miles, logged 2+ hours out there on the road. Kind of what we chatted about before, like kind of getting some of that pounding from the pavement on the legs and just getting that sort of muscular resilience and endurance built up. And I will say, 2 hours on the road is way more. I felt it more than 2 hours on the trails, and certainly more than a 2-hour swim run.
We're doing the right thing, doing sort of the adaptation for the road stuff. But honestly, I miss the trails. I was actually thinking, because I'm basically as tapered up as I'm going to be.
Yeah.
If you're watching this on YouTube, I'm shrugging my shoulders, like non-ironically. It's like, it is what it is. But it's like, I miss being on trails. Like, I'm actually thinking on Thursday, I'm going to go do a little run hike at one of our favorite spots, Big Trees, just to get some of that back in my life.
Yeah. And I impulse bought some new trail shoes that Chris sent over my way. Hey, I know you like these. He knew I couldn't affine, I think is the word you use, which isn't totally inaccurate. So
Yeah.
New trail shoes on the way. It's a good excuse to go out and hit the trails again for Attila Austin here coming up. And just so you'll have your race, you'll have a recovery taper week combined. Those sort of
Yeah, probably a lot of
same sort of
a lot of walking.
Move the body, kind of
moving the
flush out
body.
some of that blood, and
try to
hit
swim. The swim feels good. I'll just over-index on that. That won't hurt. Could only help, to be honest.
Speaking of swims, you want to make sure to head over to our Instagram page, the Low Tide Boyz. Adrian Cameron, friend of the show and top ranked Attila swim runner. He lives in the world. He lives near Pace Bend Park. He went out and did some reconnaissance and was putting some photos up of the different entrances and exits. The water levels, I cannot believe it, because I'm pretty sure the year before we were running 50 feet past where the water is now. And so I'm really excited to have some full swims on these. It's going to be a great race out there in a couple weeks.
Yeah, it's going to be cool. I mean, it's basically the same course, but every year the conditions have changed in the sense of water being low, some of the exits having to be more
rock
bouldering kind of thing,
scrambly,
to now where cliff jumps are back in play, which is awesome. So it's going to be really fun. I'm really looking forward to
that as well. And then I have my marathon coming up in December, so a couple more weeks of intense training for me, and then
the wheels come off.
and then I'm hitting that Halloween candy after December 8th is when I'll hit the Halloween candy.
It'll be on sale.
I'll get some Reese's peanut butter cups from yes. So dad tax for sure.
For me, it's a Twix, but not because of Attila. My Twix love predates Attila.
Oh, okay. But it certainly doesn't hurt.
30 years. Yeah, it doesn't hurt at all.
It doesn't hurt grabbing a Twix after the swim there. So we'll kick it right to the conversation with Adam Skolnik.
The novel is American Tiger. It comes out December 5th. Pre-order on Amazon or Barnes & Noble.
See you in Austin. Pew, pew.
Very excited to welcome back to the show. It's been too long. He first graced us with his presence, episode 28, back in 2020. But he's back, Adam Skolnik. Welcome back to the show, man.
Hey, thanks. Thanks for having me, guys. I mean, it's a swim run podcast, and I wish I could swim run right now. That's how it is in my current state, but I wish I could.
Well, we've all had our share of injuries, so wishing you a speedy recovery there. But for folks who don't know who you are, you hold a very special place in the history of the Low Tide Boyz, not just because we met you at a very auspicious time, ÖTILLÖ Catalina, but also you quoted Chipper and linked to the Low Tide Boyz in a New York Times piece about the race, which I have to say, it probably gave our very small podcast at least a 6-month runway with our wives.
With your wives, yes.
With their wives.
Just wives, though.
Yeah, with their wives, we're like, yeah, you guys can keep doing this now. So I thought it'd be fun to kind of revisit, tell us about your background, sports journalism, how you found your way to Catalina. And let's tell the origin story.
It's like I've been reading a lot of David Foster Wallace lately. There's a theme with him whenever he goes on assignment for whatever it was, Rolling Stone or whatever, Harper's. There's one story where he went in the John McCain bus. For those who are not old, John McCain ran against George Bush in 2000, and he was on the campaign bus at this time when it looked like McCain might have a prayer. He just made friends with the tech guys, like the cameraman and the boom mic. That's basically the only people he quotes in his 30-page article, and it's amazing. And so I think that was my experience at this swim run. I immediately met you guys, and I just loved your energy and loved how you guys were going about it, just having a good time. You weren't even really taking yourselves that seriously as competitors at that time.
No,
and so
we
for
still
me,
don't.
Yeah, you still. But for me, at the time, I was like, okay, these are my regular guys. These are the guys I'm going to go back to later and ask about this sport, because I could, I see where they're coming from. Only to find out you betrayed me and have become stalwart contenders in almost every swim run I find out about. So congratulations to you. Before the origin story, congratulations.
Thank you.
Cheers. Yeah. Well, I certainly felt like a source when we met, because it was just like, oh, who's this guy? That's who that is. That's who this guy started this company. It was great to meet you way back when. And it was the type of thing where
it really felt something special was happening on Catalina.
Yeah.
Like obviously, like the New York Times asked you to do a piece on it. You also have a very interesting, in the history of swimrun, you're the one who wrote the piece on Rich Roll doing the world
Right.
champs in
In
2017, and
2017.
that's where a lot of people in America learned about swimrun for the first time was from
Is that
that
right?
article.
I
So
mean,
there's a lot there.
that's
Okay.
how I first learned about it as well. I saw that he was doing it, and then Chris had kind of mentioned because he was going to do the Casco Bay one very, very close, and I was like, "Oh, Rich Roll just did one of these," and it sounded crazy, and it was like one of the craziest years.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
No, so it was like what happened with me is that the Rich thing happened. Rich told me he was doing this crazy race. And so at the time, I guess at 2017, I had been writing for the New York Times sports desk since 2013 as a contributor, just a freelancer. It started with a freediving competition I went to in 2013 and I was doing that for the Times, and it just so happened somebody died there and it became a big story, and a guy named Nick Mavoli. And so that kind of was my way. That was my first assignment with the New York Times. I was already surprised to ever be writing for the New York Times. So it was like this kind of, as a career outsider, somehow I, through kind of me just being generous on a different story to a different New York Times reporter, I got like entree into the sports desk. And so then I was able to give them what they didn't have from their staff writers, which is kind of these out there stories that they wouldn't normally have, whether it's free diving or swim run or open water swimming. Those were the kind of that was the beginning of it. And so Rich told me what he was doing. It's turned out to be, I think, one of the last kind of ultra events he's done because of his own injury thing. And so that was cool. And it was kind of a story on him, but also a story on this great sport. And then when the editors found out before I did that Catalina was happening and that the Swedes were coming to Southern California, and so they called me up and they asked me to go out there. So that's how that whole thing happened. And then I did the experience race, and my whole thing was like, just don't come in last. That was my mantra. Just like, you can't come in last. Like, it's not cool. But at the time, I didn't realize that my advantage was I was very comfortable swimming in the ocean. And so the experience race, it's like trail runners that never swim in the ocean. So I never was going to come in last. I think I came in like fourth for men, and literally pulled a hammy, like had a hammy cramp as I staggered across the line. So that was me. But then to watch you guys do the real thing, because I think you guys raced both days. Actually, you guys did didn't you?
We did the world.
Yeah,
we just did the World
race
Series
on Sunday.
Okay. Yeah, and it was the experience and sprint went on Saturday, which enabled you, because we actually saw you a couple times on course. I remember at this crazy, one of the big hills in Catalina, and I was just really suffering. And I look up and I'm like, "Oh, Chris, is this the Skolnik guy coming down?"
I'm like,
"Oh
yeah, that's
oh
the
my
reporter.
God, I don't want to talk to this guy." But so, I was like, "Oh, I'm really hurting right now." I'm like, "He's gonna want to talk to us." I'm like, "Chris, you handle this. You handle this."
You should have puked on me.
Yeah, that definitely would have made it into the story.
Yeah, no, that was it. So then I got taken around the course, and then Nick Ramirez. Is it Nicholas Ramirez?
Yeah,
Nicholas Ramirez.
Reached out to me, and then he said, "Hey, man, I like what you're doing for the sport. I'd like to just train you a little bit." And then he helped me kind of, and I really, since then, I haven't run another swim run race, but I've done it a bunch of times, and I've done I think the longest I did was like an 8. Just like I was trying to get up to what the sprint course would be, like a 9 mile. Okay. I never had a partner that I could do it with. And so I've done, several like 8-9 mile just workouts, and I love it. It's like my favorite thing. You come out, you look super weird. Everyone's just staring at you, but there's something I really love about it. And so I'd love to get back to it, and I'm sure I will at some point here soon.
Yeah, well, we'll always, whatever you need from us to make it happen.
Yeah, you let us know.
Buoys, you need gear, we got you.
The pull buoys always freaked me out because I can't, the pull buoys are fine, but the paddles were like wrenching my. I need to figure out how to do the paddles where have the entry level in to do it properly. Because my problem is I've never been coached as a swimmer in any way.
And you're just like a old school kind of like open water guy.
Yeah,
just go out swim with the sharks and stuff.
Go out there. Yeah, I like actually looking at the wildlife. That's kind of one of the main
Yeah.
attractions for me. Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
stick a pin in that because we're definitely going to get to that. So,
Okay.
so we do Catalina. We meet you. We start sort of like hitting up a correspondence. When you quoted us, we wanted you to get on the show. Since then, Adam, you and I have kept in touch, sort of following each other on socials and stuff. Now we're working together. So, full disclosure, I'm helping Adam on the release of his debut novel called American Tiger, which is coming out December 2nd. Pre-order it now, Amazon, Barnes and Noble. Anyway, there's the book. You can
There it
see it if
is.
you're watching this on YouTube. I want to get to that book, but I think it's so interesting, just sort of like the journey of a writer. And certainly we've had writers on the show before. Not that we need to turn this into like a literary podcast, but I do think like you've had to like fight for everything that you've gotten. So can you give us sort of the history on how this book came to be and sort of the work that you had to do to get this out into the world?
Sure, yeah. So my story as a writer kind of goes back a long way to a little after 2000, and I was kind of trying to figure out what to do. I was working in nonprofits in the environmental world, and I liked it. It was good, but it wasn't like I didn't see a future. Like I didn't know where it was taking me. I was kind of doing it because the jobs were meaningful in the moment, and I was never driven by money. It was never like the thing that was a driving force for me. And so I wanted to just write my way around the world. I figured I had a knack for kind of turning a phrase. A friend of mine had just started to make it in screenwriting and proven that you can make a living doing it. And so for me, it was like, I love books, I love writing, I love movies. Let's give it a shot. And so I kind of did it in a bunch of ways where I was trying to screenwrite with a friend of mine named Kelton Reed. And so we were writing a bunch of screenplays. And in the meantime, I was pitching stories to little magazines. And so over the time, the print stuff started to work, and the screenwriting stuff didn't really work. And so I just followed what was working. And so really just cold calling magazines out of the blue, including the LA Weekly, which is why I take us all the way back there. And in 2005, there was an escaped tiger in Simi Valley, California, which is in southeast Ventura County. It's like the kind of the little notch of Ventura County that's the closest to Los Angeles. It's in the deep valley, like the West Valley, and it's surrounded by a couple mountain ranges. And there was a Tiger King type couple before Tiger King in 2005. And there's been a lot of them over the years. It's not like that abnormal. I mean, it's abnormal, but it's not uncommon as you might think. And so the tiger was out there, and the game wardens were trying to find it. And it was an El Nino year, and they couldn't find it. And it was like 1 week went by, 2 weeks went by, they're not finding this thing. And so I just called, I'd done a few things for LA Weekly, and I said, let me go out there and see what's happening. So I cruised around with the game wardens, and they were taking me around looking for this tiger. And you'd see the federal trackers. They brought in some high-level federal trackers.
Heavy hitters.
And all of a sudden you see them like going down on ATVs, like charging up this fire road, and you look and they're like, game warden's like, what's going on? It turns out to be a false alarm. Like nothing is working. And then I came back and I wrote a story, and then not long after that, it was either the next day or like 2 days later, it turned up outside a school on a highway, and the rest is history. You could find out about it. So since that, I mean, what happened in real life is they destroyed the tiger as you'd think, right? And then animal rights people kind of like were upset by it. And I understand both sides of it. I always understood the game warden's side of it because it's easy to tell people who are actually doing it what they should and shouldn't do. And also they have to worry about the state and all the liability. And for whatever reason, I understood it. Like I never blamed, but there was a lot of blame heaped at them. And I kept in touch with that game warden over the years, and he was kind of embittered by the experience, but it just lodged in the back of my mind. It was such a surreal thing. At the time, I didn't realize how kind of common it can be, meaning you read about these stories every few years. And so I didn't think anything of it. I just kept pursuing my career, and eventually kind of linked up with Lonely Planet and started writing these Lonely Planet travel guides. And that was satisfying, the itch to travel. But having achieved that goal, I was like, started to get less interested in just writing guides and more interested in just service, although there's a lot to be said for service journalism and I love it. But at the same time, I was like, I need to write something great. Like I want to write something really great. And so I was coming around and trying to figure out a novel, and I wrote a novel and I got an agent, and it wasn't this novel, it was a different one. And that novel didn't sell. But that all was happening around the time that Nick died in the Bahamas. And so that, my agent kind of messaged me, and he'd seen the New York Times coverage, and he said, this should be your book. And so that kind of got me into writing nonfiction. And so I was always writing nonfiction, but in reality, like, fiction was always first, whether it was screenplays or my first novel. And so I always wanted to do fiction. And nonfiction is just easier to break into as a writer. Not that it's easy, because it's not. It's still not necessarily easy for me to get contracts. If you think about it, like, I've had some successes, and it's not always that easy. So fiction is even another level of hard. But at the time, right before that, before I went to the Bahamas, I'd had a conversation with my agent, and he said, what's next? This novel didn't sell. What are you going to write next? And I said, well, there's this thing I've been thinking about a lot. And I told him that story that I just told you about the tiger in Simi Valley. And he said, that's the one. That's the one you should write next. And then I was in the Bahamas, and then it became nonfiction. Fast forward many years later, I was able to write a book called One Breath, which is about Nick's life and death and about the sport of competitive freediving. And then not too long after that, I linked up with David Goggins and was the ghostwriter on his books. And being able to be part of the books with David gave me a level of freedom I never thought I would have. It just was, especially Can't Hurt Me was a very successful book. And so that enabled me to kind of think, what do I want to do next? And it wasn't necessarily ghostwrite for another guy just because they have money or because they have a bunch of followers. Like, David is like a real life Rocky story. And so for me, it's always been follow the great stories. And so I wanted to try this story. And so my idea of it, it's different. It's a fictional Simi Valley. It's a game warden and his daughter. It's a father-daughter story. It's a story about grief. And in the story, Belle Turn, a 9-year-old girl, is the first to see the tiger, and nobody believes her, including her father, because she has this wild imagination and exaggerates, prone to exaggeration. And so nobody believes her. And you wonder as you go through the book what's real and what is not. And so it's kind of a magical realism tale about a tiger that may or may not be in the suburbs of Los Angeles. And so that's what it's become, and that's what it is. And I'm really proud of it. The book itself is kind of like an outsider, just like I've been an outsider, just like swim runners and swim run podcasters have been outsiders. And it's interesting in media, because now in media, we're at this place where the tail's really wagging the dog. I mean, not just, it's one thing for us to talk about it because we're here on this podcast saying it, but, in a forum that would be, amenable to like, hey, we're outsiders talking shit. But like, if you look at CBS, they just, Barry Weiss, who just started a website 4 years ago, is now running CBS. So that's, and whatever you think of her, she's running CBS News now. And so it really is this point where you don't necessarily have to go through the apparatus of the mainstream media to find a foothold. And so with this book, again, didn't find a major publisher. And then there's a bunch of indies around, and they just don't pay very much, and it wasn't worth it. And I talked to some people, and, I decided to go to the same people that helped David with Can't Hurt Me and never finished. And they're called Scribe. And so we're putting it out ourselves. But I say ourselves, it's not really. I mean, there's a whole team of amazing professionals that have been a part of this from the beginning. And so I'm excited. I think it's my best work. And for me, that means a lot because I feel like I've done some good stuff. So I think people are going to love it.
I'm going to log in my pre-order tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of commercial, kind of literary. It touches a lot of boxes. So it's not easily categorized. And that's one thing we heard a lot, like, how do we sell it? But to me, it's from age 11 to age 110, people could get a lot out of it. And that's what I think people miss, especially young men these days who aren't reading as much, especially people who are just kind of keen to self-help or motivational or those kinds of books, which I love those books. I've done very well by those books and I love them. Fiction is also instructive. Fiction can be instructive to our lives. Just look at Star Wars or The Matrix. How many people have used that kind of hero's journey as a model for how they analyze their own life? I'm not saying this is the hero's journey in that way, but it is wrestling with some themes that are important to me that I think could be meaningful for other people to consider. And so I think it could enrich.
Yeah, and there's a lot in the book that not that we need to bring it back to Swimrun, but one of the themes in the book is this idea of like discovering or rediscovering your inner wildness. Like, there's some wild in all of us. Like the wildness we might think of, we're in a perfectly tame suburb, but there's still wildness out there. And, one of the things we always talk about Swimrun, here's where I'm going to make this connection. So you guys
Good
can let
work,
me know
Chris.
if I can land this plane. Is Swimrun is like this inherently wild thing. Like everything's ish. You gotta, you're subject to currents and conditions and just terrain, and so much of it is around like becoming more comfortable dealing with ambiguity and being in sort of this middle space of known and the unknown, not just in the course, but maybe within yourself and what you're capable of. Yeah, anyway, that's my attempt to land the plane. I'm curious, when you're thinking about, and this is part of like the marketing for the book, kind of like discovering your or rekindling your inner wildness, like what does that mean to you,
Right. Yeah. No, I
comparing it
think,
to
yeah, no, I mean, Swimrun is like the rewilded triathlon in a way, right? Like it's bringing
Yeah.
you back to, ultra running is very much a rewilding of the marathon, right? Like it's bringing you back into the theater that is the earth. And we do in what happens in this book, it is a suburb. It is like a planned community. It's a planned community. It's a planned suburb that kind of came up from starting from the 30s and came on. This is the truth about Simi Valley. But there's also wild things all through it. And so one of my favorite things right now is like hearing stories like peregrine falcons in London or New York City. I live in Los Angeles. I live in Santa Monica, but I'm in the ocean with sea lions and dolphins and migrating gray whales. So I'm one of the few in this city that has a direct experience with big animals and big wildlife. But you can drive down our street right now. You might see raccoons or ground squirrels, or we get coyotes coming down the street. So there is wildlife all around us. But the other part of it is we are wildlife, right? We are part of that wild world at all times, whether we pave it over with concrete and plant a lawn, or even worse, the fake lawn, the fake green lawn. You know what I mean? There's still underneath that, there's still worms, there's still grubs, there's still life coursing all around us. And so to me, we say rewilding because what we're saying is it's connecting back to the fact that we are all part of this wild world at all times, whether we think so or not. It doesn't matter if we know it, if we don't, if we think it or we don't. The fact is, we are part of the web of life. And so to me, rewilding is an acknowledgement that I am connected into this web of life. It's kind of like, it's not in any way cultural appropriated, but if you think about my own kind of feeling about it and self-discovery with it, it goes back to like Carlos Castaneda books. It goes way back to like when I was kind of trying to figure out who I was and in connection to the land and just loving the earth. As swim runners, we know how we feel when we're in the ocean or we're on the trail and we see the majesty all around us. The good thing about this audience is they know what I'm talking about. What I like about what I'm trying to do with this book is have everyone start to open up to that understanding. And through Belle, through Jay, through some of the people you meet, through the tiger, if the tiger's real, you start to figure out like, wait, there is a wildness that flows through and around and connects us all. And so that connection is what I'm hoping for, the individual with nature, the individual within the community, nature within the community. And you're starting to see it more in urban planning. You're starting to see it more in the way countries and cities and states go about development. There's wildlife crossings that are going over the 101 freeway right now in Southern California. I'm going to go to the first planting of it on Tuesday. Wow. To check that out. People are caring about these wild creatures, and you guys have it too. We have mountain lions that are completely disconnected from their territory. So like there's huge freeways that just bisect their territory, cuts off the flow of the genes. And so these wildlife crossings that are starting to be integrated here, like they have been in Europe for years, are starting to happen. And so we're seeing more and more of kind of stitching back the wild world together, which will help biodiversity and help all of us. So anyway, probably too much, but
Wow,
I landed the plane. Bumpy, but I landed it.
I love that. And I'm going to bring it back to Stormrun because, that's all we know here.
Yep.
What I love about doing a race, I feel like every race I have in my thought, I'm like, this is the complete opposite of what's going to happen on Monday morning, going and sitting at your desk on your computer and logging in. This is like the 180 of that. And I think that like that's something that really resonates with people, is just being out in nature, and you're just going, you're going with the flow. Some races you're running by a cactus, other ones it's seaweed. It's
That's
just
right.
whatever it gives you. And that's the kind of excitement and really that adventure of it that I know gets people. I feel like that's a big aspect that gets people hooked for sure.
100%. I mean, that's what I love about it. I mean, that's why I love trail running. That's why I love swimming. Jay, who's the game warden in this book, is a trail runner and a swimmer, an open ocean swimmer. And like, there's scenes of him doing that. That's who he is, because that's who I am. So he's like a reflection of me in a way. And so I totally agree with you. To me, the thing I love the most, because running is harder for me, or it's actually swimming's harder, but running is immediately harder to do. Like I feel more, I'm probably doing it more properly, so I feel more out of breath doing it. Whereas swimming, it always feels more pleasurable. I don't know why. I'm probably not swimming hard enough, but it feels more pleasurable for me always, because I'm fully immersed in the connection with nature. And there's nothing quite like it. The only thing I can think of is like backcountry Sierra Nevadas or the Rockies that I've been. That's the only where you look out and you're just in this cathedral. And so I like bringing it back. And that's what is cool about some of the swim runs you guys go to, because some of them are more urban, some of them are more out completely in the wild. But the urban ones are cool too. Like there was one in Manly. We were staying in Sydney for a couple of months, and there was one in Manly, like right when we got there. I wish I'd known. And to see that's an urban swim run. But in Manly and like Sydney is one of those cities like here, you can have an experience of wild nature in the urban environment. And so I think
I mean, I feel like Australia is like that. This feels very much like America. And then there's a bunch of parrots or wild birds that just like fly right by. We're like, what's going on here? Like it's like, this actually isn't like Tampa at all. So shout out to Andre Slade, who's a race director for that race in Sydney.
Oh yeah.
He's been putting that race on for a few years.
Dude.
I mean, I think like, to kind of follow on that thread, it's like one of the things that I think when people feel like they're ready for swim run is when they're ready to kind of step off the treadmill, when they're ready to try something different. They're burnt out on triathlon, or they're just like, something about the sport kind of captures their imagination, and then they try it, and hopefully, they go in with the right attitude and they have a great experience, and then they're hooked, and, they try to do more of them. But so much of it is about that attitude, right? It's about being open to the conversion experience. I mean, you mentioned Carlos Castaneda. Folks who don't know, he was like a anthropologist in the 70s, and hung out with this dude who he did peyote with, and is sort of like the original understanding peyote and psychedelics and stuff. He wrote this book like Road to Islan and some others that are kind of crazy.
Right.
It was like, find your path.
Teachings of Don Juan. It was the Teachings of Don Juan.
Teachings of Don Juan, exactly.
Yeah,
so his like peyote mentor was this dude like Don Juan.
Yeah.
And whether there's some criticism about the veracity of the anthropology there, but those books, I mean, for a lot of folks, it was like, oh my God, wait, there's this whole other world out here that we're either don't even know exists or have no conception of, and here's this guy basically trying to like explain it for people while sharing his own journey. And I feel like this book, American Tiger, it's obviously a novel, but it is trying to take people on a journey. It's like, hey, here's something that you might think that you know or you see on TV, but there's actually so many layers to this that only if you really step off sort of the main thing do you actually become privy to.
Yeah. And Don Juan, those books were fiction too. They were considered fiction because probably the veracity or whatever, who knows. Very clever. And it was a great series, and some books were better than others, but it had me like talking to the mountains, so it worked for me. I was in a, I don't know what I was on, but I, could have been. But I think, I think to kind of connect it with swim run and something you said early on, or just like when people are ready. When I first started swimming in the ocean all the time, I remember driving out and being nervous every time. I remember like the first time I did it out in Malibu, where I do it now, because I've done it in warmer water, but when I first started doing it in colder water, and conscious of all the the sharks and all that, it was a shark fear for me for a long time, and I have butterflies in my stomach literally almost every time I got out there, and if I didn't have it on the drive, it would hit me like in the middle of the swim, and so I remember that, and now I don't have that at all. But the point I'm making is that widening of your tolerance or your interest in being vulnerable, which I think is analogous to any sort of ultra endurance event, but specifically this one with Swimrun. That expansion is something I think that happens to all of us throughout our lives. And if you look back at kind of all the work I've done, and I didn't mean it this way, it's not like I had this grand plan, but if you looked at the stories I've covered, they're really all about one thing. It's all about we're more than we know. We're more than than we think we're capable of. And that comes across in the reporting I've done, whether it's sports or travel. And I think this is part of that because we walk around in this bubble, and people talk about bubbles a lot. There's usually politics, but in reality, the bubble is our known world, and we walk around in it, and that's it. But we can expand it, and we can pop it, and we can get glimpses of this other thing that's out there, this other version of ourselves, this other way of looking at the world. And pretty soon the bubble's going to come back. I mean, that's just the way it is. You got to float through somehow. And so Swimrun is a great way to pop the bubble, to expand your concept of who you are, your concept of the environment that's around you, especially if you're doing a local swim run. And I think books do the same thing. So that's why I'm attracted to sports and books. I mean, because to me, there's nothing that can expand possibility like story and sport.
Well said.
Thanks.
I see why
very quotable.
Like your passion. Yeah, that was. We'll clip that one up. I mean, you can really feel your passion come through. Now, from usually writing nonfiction, you've been having this novel there. When you were kind of really taking it from as an idea in the back of your head to kind of you're getting it out, you're starting to pursue that. Did you really just kind of lock in and only focus on that, or were you taking these kind of breaks where you would go in and do nonfiction work to kind of like give your mind a little bit of a different treatment for a bit?
Well, yeah, like at first, after one breath, my whole thing was I'm going to get to the bottom of what really happened. And I started to, in my head, I needed to get all the files. I needed all the case files. I needed to interview the people that were there. Because I come from nonfiction, from journalism first. And so to me, I want the source material because it makes it easier to write when you have the information. And so I was doing that, and I was hitting a lot of brick walls where I got this really crazy redacted file. If I could show you like the case file from like the U.S. attorney that kind of finally put together a case on the people that owned the tiger. And literally it's hilarious. It's like black Tetris bricks. And then like the word "the," and then another, it's like 4 words, not redacted. It was so bad. I was like, am I just really bad at this?
It's like the fucking Epstein files.
Right. I was just going to say.
Exactly. It's like these fuckers own the tiger. I mean, this is not the Epstein files. It's like they owned a tiger. You know they did. Like, just tell me what the fuck happened. So anyway, I couldn't find that. And then eventually I came around and started to locate a couple of the other wardens. I got some information. But I was so focused and fixated on getting it right. It was like an excuse to not actually do it. And then I woke up and realized I was broke again after One Breath had come out. Like I needed to get a Lonely Planet job. I needed to get some money. And so I didn't really start writing words. Along the way, I was outlining. I had a whole outline. I had ideas, but I didn't write one page or one word on the page until 2020 in the pandemic, and everything slowed down. So this is really a product of having the time and space and of getting into it. And so I got into it, and I was almost done with the first draft when April, my wife, went into labor. So that's I wasn't quite done. I was like, dude, the due date's in a couple weeks. I'm like, I'm gonna fucking get this thing done. I'm like, and then I look over, and she's like going, I'm like, oh shit. Okay, let's do that.
On pause. Yeah.
Put it on pause. It's not that big a deal. And so that happened, and then I got back into it, and then David called me and said, let's do a second book, and then I was doing that. So yeah, I mean, you fit it in where you can. And then after Never Finished came out, it was my main thing for like 2 years straight. And it took a long time. I had like 25 drafts, maybe more, that I've done to get it to the place it is now. It took I think it was 10 drafts before I even showed April any pages. I'm just sitting here doing this all day. Just that's what I'm doing. And she hasn't seen anything. And then finally she read it. And so when she read it and liked it, and I went to another friend and read it and liked it, I realized I had something. But even that version is nothing compared to what this is now. This is a really good book. So that was a good start. And so now, yeah, I feel very confident and very proud of it.
I mean, it's wild to think, no pun intended. It's wild to think how much work it actually takes.
Yeah.
Right. It isn't the thing where it's like, oh, let me just sit down and just write the great American
Yeah.
novel,
No.
get out of
Start
here,
flowing out of you, yeah.
Like Stephen King style. For every Stephen King, there's like a million other people who's like, this is a slog and a lot of work, and it takes just a lot of stick to itiveness, but also willingness to pivot, be vulnerable, you know, what's the expression? You sometimes you just have to abort, you know.
Yeah.
What's the fallacy, like the sunken cost fallacy, is like, I've written 200 pages, I can't give up now, but sometimes that's actually what you have to do, and
The
like
better
rewrite a
thing to
whole
do.
section and get rid of someone.
Yeah.
And can you speak a little bit as to like, was that like your process too? I mean, you
Sure.
mentioned like 25 drafts,
Yeah. No,
how
there's
different is it now than what it was originally?
it's like 100 pages shorter. So it's like, but that's normal. You overwrite and you distill and you find what's working and you get rid of what isn't. And so that's a normal part of anything I write. If you ask me for a 1,500 word story, my first draft's going to be like probably 3,000 words. It's just the way it is. It's the process that you go through. And then that's how you find something really good. So, that's an accelerated version. To do it with this is just a much larger and longer slog, like you said. And it's a good way of putting it. I'd say two things. One is that same idea of expanding the sense of who you are and what you're capable of. This was a journey exactly like that, where I knew I could write nonfiction. I knew I'd done that at a high level. This I didn't know I could do, even though I'd written a manuscript that I liked, but it didn't get published. So, how good was it? And this time I was like, can I do this? Because the first one was very semi-autobiographical. Like, it was like 10 years of my life squashed into one. I knew what happened. I knew how I felt. It was a lot easier to kind of get the words out. With this, I was making up I got so frustrated with trying to figure out what was happening. I decided the good thing about this is I don't have to know what happened. I can make up something totally different. And so I use that to my advantage. But like I said, for the first 10 drafts, I didn't know if it was a complete waste of my time. I really didn't know. And it was only after like the 10th draft, 11th draft, that by the time I got my first reaction where it wasn't a good read, it didn't bother me anymore because I knew it was good. And so, but the first 10 drafts, it's like, this sucks, I suck, this sucks, a waste of time. I mean, constantly in my head. And so what gets you through it is that doubt is not abnormal for anybody who is like trying to get bricks of training together to run a big race. We know that is completely normal, and you could have a whole sessions where things are fucked up. And it's like, you suck, you can't do this, you won't do it. But early on, when I was my first Lonely Planet gig, a guy named Ian Stewart, when my job was, you have 3 months, go research this part of Indonesia, and then you have another 2 months and you have to turn in 60,000 words. Well, that was for me at that time, like the most I'd ever turned in was probably 3,000 words. And that was like the longest. And I had weeks to do it. So to me, like 60,000 words in less than 2 months I didn't know if I could do it. And he said, all you have to do is write 3,000 words a day. And I'm like, that's a lot, like that's not what I'm used to, but I just took it in. And that's what I focused on, trying to get up. And you don't start there. First, it was like 1,500 words, and then I got it 2,000. Then I realized I could do it. And so that is what I relied on. So when you felt shitty, it wasn't good, I just said, you know what? I just have this outline. I have this, you reduce the blank page to a smallest chunk you can, and you focus on that, and you do those 2,000, 3,000 words that day, and then you leave, and you come back and you do it again. And so that's what got me to the point. And then you're slogging uphill, and you get to a point in your training where you know it's working, and you get the point in writing, it's the same way. It sucks. Wait, it's pretty good. Wait, now I'm running downhill, and it's getting better every time, and you feel it and you see it. And so that's what you hope for. That's what I looked for. And that was definitely the process, for sure.
I love the parallels between training as well. And you're always going to have those shitty sessions or shitty days where it feels like, running 5K, whatever the number is, getting those words on the thing is just too, how's this going to get done? Just keep moving forward. We definitely say that ours, just keep moving.
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
keep moving forward.
absolutely.
We'll get to the finish line, and we just got to keep moving. And
Right.
that's exactly that process. But that must have been a really great feeling to have it kind of come over the hump, as you were saying, about the 10th or 11th time where you were starting to feel kind of good, probably. And that, did that cause you were like really wanted to dial in and get it even more? Because you still almost sounds like less than halfway through all your
Yeah.
revisions.
Well, I mean, to really unpack it, the truth of this project is there were various speed bumps along the way where even though I felt good about it, the reflection I was getting back wasn't always positive. Sometimes it was a delay, sometimes it was a not interested. And so you can still question yourself. What got me kind of not questioning it and deciding to just become a full believer was kind of strange things started to happen. There's a character in this book that's a one-legged crow. It's a true story. I wrote the one-legged crow into the book when I lived in an apartment, not the current house that we're living in now, not far from here, but I wrote it in. And then we moved house. And not too long after that, a few months after that, April noticed a one-legged crow on our street. And I was like, what? And she took me out and we saw it. She decided to like kind of watch this crow, and we'd see it, not every day, but we'd see it kind of here and there. And then all of a sudden, she decided she's starting to feed crows. She likes crows. She's putting out peanuts. And crows are coming because crows are smart. They come to the garage rooftop whenever she shakes the peanut can. And it's not the one-legged crow at first, but then it is every time. It's the one-legged crow and their mate every time. And so we'd see this crow in our backyard almost every day for months. And then one day, I went for a run and I was running up the street and I passed a dead bird in the gutter, and I looked over and I was like, oh, I'm an animal person. I felt bad about it, but I kept running. I'm like, oh, that's a bummer. It looked like a crow. And then I got to the top of the block and I'm like, wait a second. Our crow likes to hop around in the gutter, and it could easily be hard to get out of the way of something. And I went back, and sure enough, it was the one-legged crow dead right there. And I boarded the run, and I went back and I buried this one-legged crow in our backyard. And so just even before that, just having the one-legged crow show up to me was like, I mean, maybe I'm delusional. It's possible. But to me, it was a sign from the universe that like, there's something going on here and that I got to follow it. And I don't know why I'm following it, but I'm going to follow it. And now I'm pretty comfortable with the following it isn't because I think this thing is necessarily going to be this massive hit. The following is, I read the book on audio, and we're reading it. I'm doing the recording. We're almost done with the pickups. It's almost there at Rich Roll's studio. Rich Roll's studio is literally a hop, skip, and a jump from Simi Valley. It's like right across that wildlife bridge that I'm going to go help plant, like in the same environment. That's where we're doing the audio. One of the people that's helping us, Danielle Quisenberry, she's the director of the audio. She had an experience where I didn't know her at all and got her involved in the project through a recommendation. Then her mother dies while we're doing the project, and she has to go and do a green burial. And where she goes to do a green burial, she finds something called a wind phone. And a wind phone is a way to communicate with your relatives after they're gone. It's originated in Japan before the tsunami over there. And there's a wind phone in this book, that I wrote in 2020. Wow. And so like these kinds of things happen. But what I realized is on the drive over to the studio one day is that the process is this. Like, this is the reason that like, it's not about because it's going to become a success. It's because this process is the success. Like this is I get to write this. I get to read it. I get to have these feelings. I get to talk to you about it. And to me, that is the process. That is the reward. So you just think of it that way as best you can. It's hard when you're talking about your life's work or you're talking about a race that you have some hopes and some goals with. But like, I think that's the truth though.
No, I
I
think
like
that's
that.
well said. I talk about it on the show a lot. It's like, difference between process goals and outcome goals. Outcome goals is a race, and anything can happen on race day. But one thing you can't control is being in the process and showing up every day, even when you don't feel well or it's not really flowing. And how that ends up being like the reason to do anything is just to keep showing up, whether it's for your partner or for yourself or whatever it is that you're doing. Yeah. So you're also doing the audiobook, which for folks who don't know, you did the audio for David Goggins' book where you read it and then you did this thing where it was like kind of podcast-y where you're
That was
interviewing
very
with
cool.
David.
Thank
Like
you.
no
Yeah.
one had ever done that before. Like
Right.
as someone who considers himself listens to a lot of like audiobooks, that was such an interesting experience. That was so fun. And yeah, I mean, when I first heard your voice was listening to that book. So it's cool that now that you're doing your own book. So if for anyone out there who's listened to David Goggins's books, it's like get this one if you just like the sultry, the golden pipes
The
of
Yeah.
sweet
Adam and
sounds of
stuff.
Adam Skolnik.
The pipes are back, baby. Yeah, no,
But
it's nice to be able to do it. It's nice to be able to read
yeah.
your own book, and things have advanced since we did that. Like there are things that are like directors for audiobooks. There was no directors
Wow.
for audiobooks when David and I went in the studio, and so things are more mature. And it's funny, like I kind of was going into this. Of course, I'm going to read it. Like I had this success. People really like those books, and of course, the reason they liked them is because David is amazing on the microphone. But it was also like it was a success. People liked my narration as well. And so I went into this knowing I was going to do it. But we did a sound check to make sure the studio was going to meet up to Audible's requirements. The person that did the check was like, it's good, but nonfiction is different than fiction. I think you should get an audio director, and recommended Danielle. And so then that's how Danielle got involved. And so it's definitely different. It's more demanding doing fiction. But, it's really just me telling you a story. It's kind of like if you're reading your kids a story, like a chapter book, like your 7 or 8 year old in bed, before bed, you're reading a chapter book, like something they
Make
love.
all the voices.
That's kind of it. Like that's the deal. It's me reading you a chapter book.
Yeah, in fact,
Nice.
my kids will request. They'll be like, "Oh yeah, can you do this in silly voice?" I'm like, "I got you. Don't worry
Oh
about that."
yeah.
Wow.
You guys should do silly voice. Do a silly voice episode.
Maybe we'll save that
April
for
Fools.
350. We'll do like a crazy.
Yeah.
Adam, one thing you've talked about this in another podcast, but talking about this one-legged crow, this type of stuff kind of follows you around. Like there's a lot of interesting sort of coincidences, these little mystical experiences. You were on Kyle's podcast where you're talking about going to see this fortune teller. And I know you've told that story before, but
Right.
for folks who don't listen to that
I
podcast,
think I might
like,
write
that's
a-
just awesome.
I think I might write a Substack about it. That might be my next Substack is telling the story.
There you go.
People like it. So Ketut Liar was this healer, kind of a spiritual healer, a Balinese Hindu healer in Bali. And so he's in Elizabeth Gilbert's famous book Eat, Pray, Love. Liz Gilbert and I became friends when she was researching Eat, Pray, Love. I was out there. It was like one of my first kind of international trips that I put together. I got 3 assignments and just sold everything, got rid of my apartment, and just went to Indonesia for as long as I could afford it. And those 3 stories turned into like 6 or 7 stories that really launched my ability to get into my soon to be eviction notice phase. So like that got me into the eviction notice phase. It wasn't a good time financially, but it was kind of the beginning. I had that first trip, met Liz, and then I went back like a few months later with some more assignments and less money. She said, "Hey, let's go meet Ketut." And so she took me to meet Ketut. And it was my first time meeting him. It was the only time meeting him. And what he does is he kind of reads your fortune. He reads your future. And then he makes a painting. And that's kind of the exchange. He gives you the painting, which is kind of like your astrology or your fortune. I forget exactly if he's an astrologer or what it was, but it was basically predicting your future. He's a seer. And so I went there, and Liz had a few experiences that made her believe that this guy was legit. And so I went and sat with him, and he asked me if I had any questions for him. And I was like, I was really struggling to make it financially. And I said, look, is this going to work? I've been doing it a few years now, and it was not really working that great. Yes, I could barely make it, but I was worried. And I was 33 at the time. And I said, is this going to work? Am I going to make it as a writer? And he looked at me and he did his thing. And then he's like, oh, yeah. He said, yes, you're going to have a very, very big success when you're 47 years old. You're going to have a very big success soon. Yeah, how soon? When you're 47 years old. And I'm like, that's pretty specific, but it's also 14 years from now. Okay, but I need to pay rent in a few weeks, dude.
Yeah,
So that's how I
that's
took
great
it.
to hear, but it's kind of a drag because I really need that 17 days from now.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
Could you tune your telescope a little bit, get a little bit in the next couple weeks?
Well, he saw. So the funny part of it is he saw that that I didn't love the news. Like he's giving me good news, and he was giving me good news. And he's like, "This is good news, and it's legit, right?" That's what he's thinking. Like I'm giving this guy legit news, and he's bummed. Like what's going on? He goes, "What's wrong?" And I said, "Oh man, it's just a long time from now. Like I'm 33. I just I like it's cool. No, it's good." And I kind of covered it, and he goes, "Oh, I think it was my English. It's 37." And sure enough, when I'm 37, it wasn't 37, right? When I'm 37, what he might have seen is that's kind of when I got hooked up with Lonely Planet right around there. So maybe he did see something legit. But Can't Hurt Me came out when I was 47, right before I turned 47. So that's the big story. Wow. So that's the big punchline. And then Can't Hurt Me has become this juggernaut. Yeah. And that is the reason I was able to do this book and and publish it this way. So he saw something for sure. Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's a crazy story. I remember when I heard that one, Kyle's podcast, I was like, oh my God, like that is so wow. That's crazy.
It's true. I mean, I don't know if they happen to me a lot or if it's what it is. I do think that sometimes I'll think about someone and then they'll text me or they'll call me, but I'm sure, does everyone have that? Do you have that? Like you think about someone and then boom, the text comes in within a day or two?
Maybe you're more tuned in. You're just kind of more aware of things, and it happens to people, but it might just pass them by if they're not, they're looking at their phone and stuff.
Maybe, yeah.
And you're in the wild.
Don Juan.
Yeah,
it's all Don Juan.
Yeah. Don Juan.
I sampled some of the samples, I will say. I did.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. For sure. I mean, it's all part about being a good journalist. You gotta know what's going on.
You got to. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I kind of pay attention to that stuff, but then sometimes you can delude yourself too. Let's keep it real. Yeah, but that does happen. Yeah.
Yes, we can certainly delude ourselves. Chipper and I have deluded ourselves in many swim runs, being like, "Oh yeah, this is gonna be fine." It's not fine.
Next thing you know, you got a trophy room. I heard you added on. You had to put up a trophy room. Collecting so much gold
hardware.
And silver.
Yeah, so much hardware. We got it stacked all over the place.
It's too funny. Yeah. So Adam, the book comes out December 2nd. We'll link to it in the show notes to pre-order.
Yep.
If there's a parting message for our corner of the universe as a fellow swim runner, what would that be to our listeners and viewers?
Oh, I would just say, I really respect what you guys do. I think it's a really cool sport, an amazing way to experience the world and experience your own self. And the fact that you guys are into this and you're pushing yourselves and you're diving into the wild to do it I have just immense respect for it. So I appreciate you guys and I love that you're doing it. I love the podcast. I love being able to talk to you guys about it. And I think you're great ambassadors for it. But just in general, the community is really mutually supportive. At least that was my experience. And so to see you guys and to talk about it, I mean, it's just a pleasure because I have such respect for the athletes that do it. To me, that's what it's about. It's about experiencing a life in the largest way possible for you. And that doesn't mean, to me, it doesn't mean commerce. It means real experience and adventure. And you guys are doing it. So big respect.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think that line probably bought us another 6 months of the podcast for their wives.
Tell the wives, baby.
Now we have two.
Tell the wives.
We have two from this.
Yeah, but then the wives will be like, yeah, but the New York Times Sports Desk closed down. It's The Athletic now, and they're not doing swim run stories.
Yeah, but Adam, thank you so much for coming on the show. Again, the book is American Tiger, debut novel. Get on Amazon, get on Barnes & Noble. Comes out December 2nd. Makes a great Christmas gift, Hanukkah gift. Festivus gift, Kwanzaa, whatever, or just a gift. It doesn't have to be tied to anything.
No. And the audio will come.
Treat yourself.
Treat yourself. And if you're friends and family, you can reach out to me and I might sign one and send one to you. But my friends and family deal is if I give you a free signed copy, you have to buy two. That's what I'm telling all my friends and family. That's my policy.
Good policy.
It's a good policy.
It's
good policy.
Yeah.
Well, I hope to see you guys. I hope to get healthy and see you guys out there somewhere.
For sure.
Absolutely. See you out there.
All right, cool. Right on.
That's it for this week's episode. Thanks so much for listening to the show. Make sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and leave a rating or review since that's the best way to help other people discover the show and the sport of swim run.
Check out our website, lowtideboyz.com. That's boys with a Z, for swimrun resources, including gear guides, tips, how-to videos, and so much more. Make sure to check out our meme page at The Low Tide Boyz on Instagram. If you have any questions or suggestions for the show, send us a DM or email us at lowtideboyz@gmail.com.
We'd like to thank Writing Easy Records for our show music, and of course our wives for their support and tolerance of our swimrun and other activities.
Lots of activities.
Lots of activities.
Finally, you can support our efforts on Patreon. Until next time, get out there and go for a swim.
Then a run.
And then a swim.
Then another run.
Then another swim.
Then run some more.
Just keep going.
Let's go.
And then stop at some point because, you know.
And fuel. Don't forget to fuel.
Gotta fuel too.
Of course, yes.
And then